to a prison which had the highest density Muslim population of any Class C prison in the country. This meant that the prison authorities had to imprison Tommy in solitary confinement, and there he stayed for 10 weeks, way past the limit that defines that process as human torture. What follows is some exclusive footage of Tommy in jail. He is pacing around a yard that is allowed to pace around for just 30 minutes in every 24 hours, often with other prisoners, Muslim prisoners, abusing him.
I was a little prisoner, 808 4CD, I've lost 2.5 stones, 2 months of solitary confinement, 33.5 hours a day in the cell. Now, some people would think I was angry about the situation. If I was angry, I'd be accepting my own victimhood. I may be their target, I'm no one's victim. And to be honest, the support I've received on the outside has kept me smiling the whole way through this. I come down here, this is all I get to do. I see no one. For what? I've committed no crime. It's insane. My little walk. Like and then sleep and repeat. But yeah, I want to say thank you. Cheers for doing this, Guff, as well.
Because the Muslim cooks in the prison had intimated they were going to poison him, Tommy decided all he could do was eat a single tin of tuna a day, and that's all he could afford, because on the criminal system he was only allowed £12.50 a week instead of the £50 a week allowed for civil offences. On £50 a week he'd have been able to eat pretty well. On £12.50 a week he had a small tin of tuna and an apple a day. He lost 2.5 stone in 10 weeks. Placed on the ground floor near the mosque, his cell was exposed to the Muslim prisoners going to the mosque, and as a result, human excrement was being shoved through his barred window. He had no choice but to seal off the window in a very, very hot summer. And so, now to round up Tommy's criminal record, let's examine that football hooligan conviction.
Football. So, and this is the thing that frustrates me again. I hold my hands up. I have not been an angel. I don't claim to sit here polishing my halo. I don't. But as well as that, I'm now 36. I'm a father of 3. I'm not. You know yourself, ask yourself watching this, are you the man you was when you was 19 years old? Are you the man you was when you was 25 years old? I wouldn't change one single thing that's happened in my life, because I believe every single moment of it, even the worst moments, end up chiseling your character and creating who you are. And I sit here now and I react differently. I'm a different person. I had a conviction for swearing. Luton were playing Newport. And the headline is convicted hooligan. Yeah? My conviction was for shouting, I'm sorry, I'm actually sitting in Wales now, but shouting sheep, sheep, sheep shaggers. Yeah? Which is, I think it might have even been St George's Day. Luton were playing Newport. It's England versus Wales. It's a football stadium. That's what people do. But I was convicted and tried, and do you know what? I couldn't make any sense of it. When I got arrested, I thought, what's this? And they took me to court, and 2 police officers said, yes, I swore. So I was convicted of swearing, and then they gave me a 3-year ban. Now, the 3-year ban, this is when I understand what it's about. The 3-year ban wasn't just for football. I was given a map showing me where I could and couldn't go. I was banned from the entire Muslim community. So again, they used the football law in order to place a ban that would prohibit and limit my political activities at the time in my hometown. But yeah, that's the other one. So for all the people who say I'm a convicted football hooligan, yeah, I got convicted for shouting and swearing at a football stadium.
The pattern here by the state is one of persecution. The football incident for swearing in a football stadium, well, let's face it, if you actually arrested everyone for that, you would have empty football stadiums. But the terms imposed by that conviction were political, and this is where the state has become overpowering and misusing the laws to get their way in other areas. This overbearing attitude of the state simply has to be corrected in any democracy. But now let's start to examine in more detail the media bias. Here we go back to 2011 when Tommy was forewarning about the grooming gangs in a Paxman Newsnight interview.
The group's about 2 years old and the police aren't quite sure how to classify it.
That is because the police did not classify it as far right. It invited in all religions and all races, including Muslims.
They're vehemently anti-Islam, yet also have non-white and gay members.
That is right, because Tommy is not a racist.
So in a moment, I'll talk to their self-styled leader, Stephen Lennon, the man who goes by the pseudonym Tommy Robertson. Well, Stephen Lennon of the English Defence League is here now. English Defence League, what are you defending England from?
Sharia law, Islamism, the complete spread of militant Islam.
Note that Tommy said militant Islam. The interviewer Paxman will now try to get him to blame all Muslims. He will continually refuse to listen to what Tommy Robinson is saying.
Which we're seeing in our towns and cities across the country.
And yet you say you're not against Muslims.
No.
They could join your organisation, but you are against Islam.
We're against Islam taken in its 7th century barbaric form.
Paxman yet again trying to distort what Tommy says, being against all Islam, Paxman is trying to get him to say, when Tommy is completely stating it quite clearly, it's against the extreme form of Islam.
Well,
Which
your
when it's
direct
taken,
quote is, I'm not against Muslims, just Islam.
Against militant Islam.
Now Paxman, the third attempt to distort what Tommy has just said.
And when I say Islam, taken in its 7th century barbaric form. If Islam was to evolve, which it needs to evolve, to fit in with Western democracy, which is clearly not. Clearly there's a problem. Clearly the English Defence League is a phenomenon that swept this country. And with the issues I'm talking about, Jeremy, if I ask you, do you know anyone that's hooked on heroin sold to them by Muslim gangs? You probably don't. I do. Do you know any beautiful girls that you went to school with that are now wearing a burqa that don't see their family? Probably don't. I do. Do you know anyone who's been murdered by a Muslim gang? You probably don't. I do. Do you know any 15-year-old girls that you know that you've grown up with that have been raped or pimped? You don't. So I don't expect you to understand the issues.
These are all personal issues of yours.
Now, quite bizarrely, Paxman is trying to make out that these rapes, these things going on, these crimes, are just personal issues of Tommy Robinson.
Personal issues in towns and cities like mine that are happening, and they're not happening with the Sikh community, they're not happening with the Jewish community.
And indeed, they're not happening with most Muslims.
No, they're happening within the Islamic community. This is what I'm saying, that it's an Islamic problem. And when I'm just a simple person, so I'm just a normal person, but when I'm looking at, I have to look for where this hatred's coming from.
So are you seriously suggesting there aren't white drug dealers and there aren't white gangs?
Of course I'm not, no.
Or Sikh gangs or any other kind of...
No, I'm not, but I'm saying some of these specific issues are coming from the Islamic community, solely the Islamic community. Terrorists wanting to blow us up, constant hostile activity towards our youth, all these problems, and from sitting back, there's got to be something it's coming from. None of the other communities are spreading it, so we're a symptom of the problem. The English Defence League are a symptom.
You're claiming that community is spreading it. Actually, what we're talking about
Members
here...
of the community.
Yes, exactly, as you could talk about
I'm not
members
saying
of
the
the
whole
white community doing all sorts of atrocious things.
Yeah, but not 24-year-old groups of 10 of them hanging around outside school gates.
You've never seen a white gang?
And purposely targeting...
Never seen a white gang?
Are we going to pretend that Muslim groups are not out there purposely targeting our youth and pimping them?
Some 84% of these crimes are committed by men of Pakistani origin. And of course, there are other Muslim origin crimes being committed, resulting in some 90% of convictions being from Muslim men. But adult Muslim men only represent about 1% of the United Kingdom population.
Are we going to pretend it's not
You're
happening?
not pretending white people aren't doing that?
Then not in the same manner, not in the same group. They're saying it's a cultural thing which is going on within their community. And no one dare say it. I sat and watched Question Time, and when I watched Question Time, all I could see our political leaders was trying to explain that Jack Straw could have dressed it up a little bit better.
Experiences.
Yes, I mean, of course I recognise it, and although no one's mentioned it this morning, I mean, it's a abuse of young girls, typically by men, has no ethnic boundaries, but this particular kind of gang abuse is particular. I'm sorry to say, but it's just true. It's particularly prevalent amongst the Pakistani heritage community. So it's not actually amongst the Indian heritage community. There's a bit of that, or the Bangladeshi one. It's something wrong inside the culture of some Pakistanis and their groups.
Whilst it's in the UK that Pakistani men are the predominant group in the grooming gangs, in other countries it's Afghans that are the predominant group, and in other countries Somalians that are the predominant group. The common denominator here is that they all come from the Islamic community.
Now, we've had examples of this in my former constituency, where I'm still heavily involved in local matters. Happily in Blackburn, because there had been very good coordination between the police and the social services, we didn't have any cover-ups of what was going on, and we were able to nip it in the bud. But in adjacent towns, including Rochdale, and across the Pennines in Rotherham, you've had these terrible examples where the social services and the police really covered their eyes at what was going on with disaster.
And talking about these girls like they're statistics. They're not statistics. These girls are... Well, whose daughters do you think these are? Whose sisters? They're ours, in working class towns and communities. And people are fed up of what's going on, and it is being ignored. For 20 years, our councillors and the leaders from the Islamic community have conspired with the police to not deal with Muslim pimping gangs. They've allowed systematic rape of our youth for the fact of being scared to be called a racist.
Although you know perfectly well that this happens in all communities with a tiny minority of people. Your broader point is to tar the whole of the Muslim community.
I'm not tarring the whole of the Muslim community, no.
Well, you keep saying that the Quran is an evil book.
I didn't say that, but I will agree with you on that, but I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that there is a root problem. We're all symptoms. All these things are symptoms. We need to... Don't waste your money. The government are going to waste their money doing an in-depth investigation into these Muslim paedophile gangs, yeah? Don't waste your money. Do an in-depth investigation into the Quran. All of this hatred has got to be coming from somewhere. Because every time we hear a philosopher or an expert on Islam who's a non-Muslim, they'll tell you.
Any Muslim who takes the Quran seriously is, in your view, an enemy of this society.
No, any Muslim that takes it in a 7th century barbaric form.
In that case, so you believe in some sort of revised Quran, do you?
I believe they need to revise it. I believe...
Who should do the revising?
97% of imams who are teaching in this country are from abroad. So that means these imams are teaching the same form of Islam that is taught in Saudi Arabia, the same thought that is taught in Pakistan. In Saudi Arabia, you can't have a Bible. Both of these countries are Sharia-driven hellholes without being rude. And
And for a second example of media bias, in this case total media distortion, we're going to look at Sky News. Just take a look at this headline from The Sun. This headline went all over the world. And where did it originate from? Well, it originated from Sky News with an interview with Tommy Robinson. And I want you to note 2 words in particular. The first word is he. And the second word is also he. So Tommy Robinson says that he doesn't care if he incites fear of Muslims as long as it prevents children from being raped. And that headline was run right throughout the world, as far as Australia and America, Europe, etc. But that headline is simply not true. What they did was ask a question in a voiceover and then take an answer from another question in the interview, and also had then to change 2 words. So let's see what Sky News broadcast.
Villain to some, but glorified outside court today. There's no doubt he's become a public figure, but I put it to him that, as with terrorism, his opinions on grooming gangs risked demonising an entire community.
So there is the question. It's about his opinions demonising an entire community. Now please note when Tommy answers, he doesn't say he. The 2 he's don't appear in the sentence. What he says is it. And the reason for this we'll explain in a minute.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I don't care if it incites fear, so long as it educates the children and prevents them being raped. Okay?
Do you really
There's-
want to leave this interview with the thought that you're happy to instill